Ichiko Aoba is another one of those artists who have inspired me since learning of Japanese music. She's known for her beautiful, soft, and magical melodies, which I find comfort in listening to whenever I'm feeling stressed or tired. Personally, I think Ichiko Aoba is so special because of her niche. She's technically a folk artist, but for me she's riding perfectly on the border of contemporary Japanese music and the sound of folk/classical guitar. Here is an introduction into the world of Ichiko Aoba. Ichiko Aoba was born in Chiba, but raised in Kyoto Prefecture. As one of the most culturally rich areas in Japan, Kyoto definitely fostered Ichiko's creative aspirations, which manifested in her learning classical guitar at the age of 17 from Anmi Yamada. Ichiko would practice Yamada's songs to very high proficiencies, at which point Yamada suggested that Ichiko herself should write music. Just a quick thing to point out before we jump into the albums, nearly all of Ichiko's album covers are solid colors, which intend to suggest an emotion, and just intend, regardless of what you end up feeling at the end. Ichiko is interpretation, so of course none of my interpretations may be even close to what you find, but that's alright.
This is so cool. Wait, what?
At age 19 in 2010, Ichiko Aoba released her very first album titled Razor Girl. Although some have criticized it for its lyrics being unsophisticated and naive, none have taken away from the musical value that this album holds. The songs are basically built solely on her voice and her guitar, yet they are so enchanting. A song that demonstrates this perfectly is Kokoro no Sekai, which translates to Realm of My Heart. Ichiko has a silky smooth falsetto that is exemplified by this song. Since this was Ichiko's debut song, she had a relatively low budget and simply recorded the sound of waves with her iPhone and incorporated it into some other parts of the album. Origami is pretty similar to Razor Girl in terms of Ichiko's approach, but still showed some development that even I can recognize. In this album, Ichiko felt that she had interacted with more people, so she chose a skin-colored color for the album. In songs such as Grey Day, Ichiko is able to evoke such an awful sense of lethargic, lifeless stagnance. The first time I listened to Grey Day, I was shocked by how accurately it really did make me feel like I was on a grey day. Let's appreciate this often unappreciated song for a second. Utabiko was released just 1 year after the 2011 earthquakes. This, in conjunction with her increasing fascination and love for nature, led to her having the color for Utabiko be a solid green. The standout song in Utabiko for me is Imperial Smoketown. It is an absolutely excellent album opener and is really intense in terms of the emotion it invokes. The song begins with this mysterious guitar plucking that really builds up to her vocals, which are charismatic in keeping the listener engaged in such a way that is indescribable. It kind of keeps you on your toes. It's a very different atmosphere compared to her previous works, and uses the 7 minutes of the song in a way that never bores you. The title of the album Utabiko was derived from two different Japanese words. Specifically, Yamabiko, the name of a mountain yokai or god, and Uta, which means song in Japanese. Ichiko had also said in prior interviews that she was influenced by city pop artist Teiko Onuki, which unsurprisingly led to a cover of Teiko Onuki's Sanbiki no Kuma ending up on Utabiko. The last song of the album is one to pay respect to the victims of the earthquake, titled Hikari no Furusato, or Hometown of Light, with light generally having a connotation of spirits. Zero released in 2013 and has been consistently regarded as one of Ichiko's strongest works. For Zero, Ichiko Aoba decided on pink for the album cover to represent the heart, as she had begun to recognize the more complex aspects of emotion in music. To not understate what I'm about to say, Zero is probably my second favorite album ever created. There is also bias here for me though, because the song's opener was actually my very first exposure to Ichiko Aoba, as it probably also was for many other people. The opener is called Ikinokori Bokura, which roughly translates to "We are the survivors." According to Interview, Ichiko had first dreamt of the song, which is amazing considering the sentiments reflected in the piece. It first begins very cheery and happy, but the lyrics slowly start to develop to reflect a much darker image. The title of the song, in conjunction with the album's release date, also seems to hint at the 2011 earthquakes. The lyrics are graphic and disturbing, but are perhaps needed for audiences to gauge the true horror of the 2011 earthquakes. The second song of the album is called I Am Pod 0%. This gorgeous song is pretty contentious across our community in terms of its interpretation. However, judging by the title of the song and some of the lyrics, my interpretation is that the song is about some mysterious object which is able to hold and preserve memories. Ichiko often leaves things to be ambiguous in her work, which I enjoy. This album is also so important because it completely destroys all barriers that Ichiko Aoba previously held towards folk music. Iriguchi Deguchi, which translates to entrance-exit, is a huge 12-minute long song that features almost no structure, with a surprising amount of natural noise incorporated into the piece. It turns out that Ichiko had recorded this song near impromptu, while walking end-to-end from a tunnel, hence the title, Entrance-Exit. This also explains why we can hear car noises at some points of the song. This creativity is attributed to Ichiko's genius and Zack, a past member of the prolific Japanese band Fishmans that collaborated with Ichiko on Sum of Zero. In the middle of the album, there is a song called Uta no Kehai, which translates to the traces of music. This song is pop-like in sound and length, being 2 minutes long, the shortest song on the album. By commenting on music as a whole, with such a song as seen by its title, it seems like Ichiko is trying to convey that accessibility is so important in music, but enjoyment is also imperative. Right after Uta no Kehai, Ichiko unleashes a 12-minute story called Clockwork Universe. Clockwork Universe begins in a soft, melancholic tone, but slowly shifts to a almost stern tone, which matches the lyrics. Here, there's a dialogue, and as the listener agrees in the song to listen, the speaker unleashes a story of an outcast, which proceeds at a tense pace throughout the whole story, keeping you on your toes. The guitar is excellent here in persisting the pressure. As we move to the second stanza, where the narrative begins to show some more self-pity, Ichiko shifts to melodies to reflect such. Then, the speaker begins to talk of loving the listener. As the song progresses, we can see that the speaker is actually talking out of mostly delusion, a story of despair and grief. Ichiko Aoba manages to illustrate the whole thing vividly with her voice and a guitar. Easily another one of my favorite Ichiko pieces. Ichiko explained that Mahoroboshiya was thought up simply by her imagination, combining the words for star and utopia, which are Hoshi and Mahoroba respectively. Ichiko has a super wild imagination, and the meaning the album title ends up taking on is a Mahoroba on a star, or a utopia on a star. Unfortunately, due to time, I'd like to highlight one particular song in this album that I found myself taking a liking to. That is, of course, Taion-san, or simply Sun in English. Along with Ikinokori Bokura, Taion-san was one of my first exposures to Ichiko Aoba, which made me fall in love with her music as a whole. Something that is interesting with this album is the name. Since Mahoroboshiya is a made-up word, Ichiko felt that the album was more personal to her, with the entry to the album being narrow and perhaps not as easy to get into for some listeners. However, for her next album, Ichiko sought to resolve this, finding a title that wasn't confined by any language, but instead built purely by imagination. Ichiko arrived on QP, in lowercase specifically, which she felt resembled the wings of a butterfly, which I think is super cool. The theme of butterflies is also present in several of the music videos within this album. While creating the album, Ichiko had also worked exclusively in the dark, which she described as enjoyable and relaxing. Hence, during Ichiko's lives, she often limited the lighting for the performance, which works especially well with the vibe of QP. According to interview, Ichiko's favorite song is Teri Furiyame, the rain from light and shadow. This song seems to describe a transformative experience, with two main stanzas. As we move to the second stanza, the song suddenly takes on a whimsical glee. I imagine this as when the character is finally able to overcome something, or is born, and is now instead left to maintain themselves, as cracked heels apparently has an implication of future obstacles, while transparent wings feel developmental and not fully complete. I can fully understand why Ichiko loves this song, especially because the title and song talk of light and shadow, something that Ichiko loves to bring up in her songs. Another notable song in QP is Dareka no Sekai, which translates to someone else's world. Ichiko made the song in 2011, right after Japan experienced the largest and most devastating earthquake in their history, as mentioned. However, Ichiko held off on releasing it because she believed the sensitive nature of the lyrics would not be received well at the time. Faint Song of the Rabbit Moon is another short song about the shadow on the moon that we often refer to as the rabbit moon due to the shape. Short and sweet, we also see the motif of butterflies reappearing in the song, as ears like butterflies flap. From the release of QP to 2020, Ichiko began working on a project that would completely change the trajectory of her career in both Japan and Western audiences. However, in the meantime, Ichiko began to explore many other ways to her approach of music. This manifested in many different collaborations. This includes notably Albert Karch, Sweet William, and even Mac DeMarco, although the song seems to be removed from YouTube. In 2019, Ichiko featured on a soundtrack, Ballad of the Winged Fish, of The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Many fans were excited to hear the incorporation of the song, but it unfortunately never appeared in Link's Awakening, which made its mysteriousness more compelling to some fans. Ichiko also created several singles and an EP, perhaps as a prelude to her upcoming magnum opus. Amuletum Bouquet released in early January of 2020, featuring two songs named Amuletum and Bouquet, both of which were also her few songs titled in English, perhaps an inclination in making herself more accessible. According to Ichiko, Amuletum is a protection song for sailing. During 2019, Ichiko had also spent a period of time in whale-catching cities, where she manifested her fascination of echolocation into a song, hence the magical-sounding harp instrumentation. With every song, Ichiko explains that she has a silent orchestra inside of her head, and she was finally able to show that in Amuletum, with the help of Japanese composer Taro Umebayashi. For Bouquet, Ichiko said in an interview that she wanted to create a song that expressed different species living on the planet as a flower bouquet. So, the song first begins by naming off many different flower species, where the climax is reached as she hits the last name. Then she slowly starts beginning to express herself. Seabed Eden is another amazing single by Ichiko Aoba. She wrote a little excerpt for this song, so I'd like to read that for you. In the morning and at night when I'm melting and feeling fuzzy, I soak in the bathtub as usual, put the keyboard at the entrance of the bathroom, and when I feel like getting hot, I go up and touch the keyboard. This song was born in the process of doing so. As you can tell, Ichiko's creative process is very unique, and in her final magnum opus album, which will be talked about in part 2, we will address many more of these things.